All right, Brian. Hey, everybody. This is Deb.
This is Brian.
And we're here from Life in Guatemala. And today we are here with our friend Kim Rogers. I know her name shows on the screen as Kim Diane Rogers, but that's how she's known on her Facebook pages. But we're going to wait a few minutes and see how many people join the chat before we actually get going. I see there's a couple people on already, but let's start with today's talk is mostly supposed to be about Antigua and being an expat in Antigua and getting your questions. And excuse the music you hear in the background. Kim had to come to Starbucks to be part of this video to get some good. Hey, Carrie from Guatemala is saying hi, Kim and Brian.
Hi, Carrie.
Glad to have you here, Carrie. So I guess let's start first of all because people can watch this after the fact also if they didn't catch the beginning. But let's start with how you ended up in Guatemala. Tell us a little bit about your journey from the States to Guatemala and how you got there and what was the whole picture.
Okay, sure, love to. My journey to Guatemala started actually in 2001. I was an airport customer service agent, Greenville, South Carolina, and I checked a woman in for a flight. As I put the bag tag around her suitcase, I saw GUA, Guatemala City, and I thought, I have never thought a thing about Guatemala. So I asked her, what in the world are you doing in Guatemala? She said, oh, I'm going to Spanish school in Antigua. It's a beautiful little town. You should check it out. And having been a Rotary Exchange student in 1987, there's Spanish schools? How did I not know about this? So I went home and checked it out. And that was, the internet was not good back then. There was lists of Spanish schools, but I failed to get her contact. So I was overwhelmed with information, and my husband at the time was not interested in that kind of travel. So it took me 12 or 13 years before I finally got to Antigua for the first time in 2013. By then I had divorced, remarried, moved to Houston, and I was a flight attendant. So I had my flight benefits, and my husband, David, was interested, and we found an Airbnb and had the free flights down and came down in July. And, from the moment the car hit the cobblestones, I was in love.
You were in love with the cobblestone streets in a car?
It was so quaint. And we came in at night. So, it was really edgy. And I thought, this is for me. So stayed with Evelyn at her Airbnb at the top of 4th Avenida, right under the cross. And we stayed 5 nights. The next morning, went up to Cerro de la Cruz, looked around, like, this is perfect. So we just toured around and had a great time and went back to Houston and started planning to bring my stepsons. I mean, that was the reason for the trip, was to scout it out to see if I wanted to bring my 3 stepsons to Antigua for Spanish school for their first international experience. Okay. So I compared to Veracruz and Guanajuato, Mexico, because I flew there when I was working and I knew people that had Spanish schools there, but you cannot compare Mexico to Guatemala. It's such a much better value here. And
is it? Okay.
The fact, it's like a third the price. And the fact that this is a flat town that's easy, 9 blocks by 9 blocks, you can't really get lost here. There's just no comparison whatsoever. So in July of 2015, I brought my 3 stepsons, my stepdaughter, my husband, and then my 2 best friends, their husbands, and their kids. Wow. I was talking it up, and they're like, oh, that sounds like so much fun. And their sons, their sons were in Spanish immersion at school. So I said, everybody get your passports. Let's all go together. So my first group was 14 people in July of 2015, and we came for 2 weeks. We stayed with individual host families, went to school 4 hours a day, and did the optional activities in the afternoon. It was a blast. Everybody had a really great time. So after that, a year later, tickets were really cheap, like $300, and lived in Houston, so the flight's 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, so it's a lot closer.
Yeah, it's easy. I would leave my house. I live 10 miles from Houston, George Bush Intercontinental Airport. So leave at 7, take the 9 o'clock flight, land at noon in Antigua, eating lunch at Cafe Condesa by 1:30. So wow. that was what I love to do. And so in 2016, I came just with my husband for a week of vacation. And then in 2018, after Hurricane Harvey decimated Houston, we hosted a family named Russ and Mary Beatty. They stayed with us for 8 months after the hurricane. And I talked so much about Guatemala, and then they were lamenting that they had spent their retirement funds when their son was sick. So they were like, we'll never be able to retire. And I said, well, have you thought about retiring abroad?
Guatemala, yeah.
You can live on your Social Security. They had never heard of such a thing. So they started studying all the YouTube videos about Guatemala, and then they looked at Mexico and Ecuador. So I planned a trip. She said, will you plan a trip for us? I said, I would love to plan a trip. By the way, they are happily retired in Ecuador now.
Oh, they ended up going to Ecuador after all.
They went to Ecuador and they went to Mexico, and they felt most at home in Ecuador. So very happy for them. I'll get there to visit them eventually. So in July of 2018, that was my 4th trip. I planned for 6 of us at first, but then Mary got so excited, she invited, or for 4 of us, excuse me, then she invited 6 friends. So then I had a group of 10, 6 of whom I did not know.
So you ended up being a travel agent without being a travel agent.
Yeah, well, actually, my college degree is in business administration with an emphasis in travel management and a minor in Spanish. So that's when I started using it. So I planned this trip. I spent 6 months happily planning this trip for 10 people. And I had my eye on this beautiful 5-bedroom house in Callejon del Burrito here on the outskirts of Antigua. And I had wanted to stay there, but never had a good excuse. Well, now I had the perfect excuse. I wanted no more than 8 people because 8 people will fit in a van. 10 people is a little bunch. But she had this other couple that really wanted to come. And so I said, okay, we'll do 10. And I had one meeting with them. They said, we're active adults. We hike and bike and, we don't want to be bored. We want to be busy. We want to have fun. So I jam-packed that itinerary. I mean, I had an activity every morning and every afternoon. So that's the first thing I learned. You got to build in time for relaxation, for shopping, for drinking, because that's what most people are interested in. But anyway, they came. They had a good time. We loved the house. We did all the activities. That's when I learned the hard lessons that people need time to relax and shop. They like to shop and they like to drink. So I learned a lot of good lessons on that trip. It was on that trip, the last 2 days of the trip, they were kind of high maintenance Houstonians, used to getting their way and doing what they want. So they ended up wanting to do Lake Atitlán in one day, and I had to rearrange everything. I didn't recommend it. I still don't recommend it, but I made it happen for them because they said, this might be their one and only trip to Guatemala. They wanted to see the lake. So made it happen. And I said, I'm going to send you all onto the lake because it's hard work being a travel agent and a tour guide.
Yes.
And I did it as a volunteer, mind you. They got a great bargain out of that trip. So that day I sent them off to the lake, and the next day they hiked Pacaya. They loved the ATV tour. They loved Pacaya. They liked the lake, but they agreed with me. It wasn't a great idea to do it in one day. So I think it was the last day when they were doing Pacaya, I decided to have lunch with my friend Valerie Russell, the owner of Due South Travels. I was her first customer. I hired her to do some of the tours on that trip. We met at Hector's Bistro when it was at the old location near La Merced, and I was walking through Antigua, passing La Merced. The sky was robin egg blue. The palomas, the birds were flying around the fountains at La Merced, and I was very worried because fuego had erupted 1.5 months earlier, and that time I did not know how bad it actually was. Nobody knew. The government was covering it up. They said, 100 and some people died. Well, the truth was 2,000 to 3,000 people died. But at that time, I didn't know. And Antigua was not that affected, except for tourism collapsed. I had come, this was my 4th trip. The 3 previous trips, was busy, full of tourists. Now there was hardly anybody. I did not cancel the trip because I had local friends that I consulted with, and they said, come, we had a bit of ash we had to clean up, but, tourism should not be affected, come. So, I donated $100 while I was here. I sponsored a student at Escuela Integrada, but then I was very worried about tourism. I was worried about the Airbnb owners, the hotel owners, the Spanish teachers, the Spanish schools, the Uber drivers, the van drivers, this whole town.
Real quick moment. Can you see any of the remarks on your end?
I cannot.
Okay, Carrie chimed in that she worked with Valerie from Due South Travels also, and that she helped her with her transition living in Guatemala.
Yeah, Valerie is the best the best tour guide I've ever had. And she was my roommate.
I just wanted to kind of get that in while we're.
Yeah, let's see. Where do I see the comments?
On your end, I'm not sure. I have mine on the
I
side.
got it. I got it. There they are.
Okay.
There they are. Okay. So, I'm walking past the Merced and I'm thinking about how is this town going to survive? Little did I know, this is very cyclical. There's earthquakes, there's volcanic eruptions, there's COVID, there's economic collapse in the U.S. All things affect tourism here. So it's up and it's down. And I was super worried. But I was walking, and at the time I had quit being a flight attendant. My husband David did not appreciate me being gone, and he wanted me to stay home, which I tried for a while and couldn't stand. So I had taken on a temporary position at Aldi, the grocery store, in Atascocita, about 10 miles from the Houston airport. And while I enjoyed my customers and I loved the products, working there was not that much fun. Although I will say the huge blessing is that over 20 of my customers from Aldi have come to Guatemala, and several of them have sponsored students here.
You're just an ambassador. You're an ambassador. Specifically
an ambassador for
Guatemala in general, but very much so Antigua.
Yes, so all of my customers, what they would always ask when they came through my line was, when are you going to Guatemala again? They'd say, oh, I like your haircut. Well, I go to Antigua to get my haircut. So, I had that job, but that wasn't a career for me. That was a placeholder to keep me busy. And I was like, what do I want to do next in my life? Like I have a college degree, but I don't have a lot of confidence. What should I do? So this voice came loud and clear as I walked past La Merced, and it said clearly, you, Kim Rogers, are from Houston, Texas, a city of 8 million people. Everyone you know has been to Los Cabos or Cancun. Everyone goes to Mexico, but no one knows about Guatemala. And if they do, they think you're going there because you're a missionary. So you need to go back to Houston and start giving talks. You need to talk it up. Tell people what's special about Guatemala. You need to invite them to come to spend their vacation dollars. You need to encourage them to sponsor students, buy coffee, buy jade, buy textiles, spend their money, support education, give Guatemalans opportunities to earn a living in their home country.
That's great. That is great.
The voice was so clear. So I went to lunch with Valerie and told her, and she's like, that'd be great because here we are down here. We have INGUAT, the official Guatemalan agency that promotes tourism. And then we have a bunch of businesses trying to promote, but the message is hard to get to the States because we're not in front of the people. And, it's a small country, small budget. So advertising is, hard. And people are scared because the State Department says that Guatemala is dangerous.
Exactly.
So I went home and my first talk was at the Atascocita Library. I said, travel to Guatemala, Kim Rogers. And it was a lot of fun. And then one of my customers at Aldi offered to pay me $50 to come speak to a group of seniors about Guatemala. So that was my first paid trip. Then I wanted to speak to Rotary clubs because I had been a Rotary Exchange student. So Providence, I ran into a previous Rotary president at a yard sale, and I was talking about Guatemala and how I wanted to raise money for the volcano victims who had lost their homes when fuego erupted and the pyroclastic flow covered up a couple of villages. So I was trying to raise $5,000 to build houses and to send emergency money down for food. So she overheard me talking. We connected. I said, oh, you've been on my to-do list to connect with Rotary because I would love to talk about Guatemala. So she said, we'd love to have you. So she said, come speak when you get back from your next trip. So I was about to do my 5th trip, which would have been November 3rd, 2018. And the reason for that trip was to go down. I was invited for a sponsors gathering for Escuela Integrada. And I told my husband, I knew he was tired of Guatemala. He had been 4 times. And I said, I know you probably don't want to go again, but you're invited. And I really want to go because I'm really interested in sponsoring the student and getting other people to sponsor. So he said, you know what, go on. I know you love it down there. He said, in fact, why don't you look at houses while you're down there? He said, we could sell the RV and you could buy a vacation home. Should have known. That was a big red flag because when we got married, he said, we will never take separate vacations. And I was in complete denial. He had begun drinking, became an alcoholic. I was having an affair. So the morning of that trip, another voice came to my head. I was rushing around the house, weighing my suitcases because I had 200 pounds of books, backpacks, shoes, and clothes to donate. So I was weighing, and I had a flight attendant coming with me that could check 140 pounds for free.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
I was making sure that the bags were the correct weight, and doing the last minute things to get everything ready. I was going to Guatemala, and my husband was going to Arizona. Another red flag, leaving a 14-year-old and 2 dogs home alone. That's what he wanted to do. So I hear him in the bathroom shaving, and it seemed to go on forever. And I thought, what in the heck is he doing? The last time he did that was when we were dating. So my face just turned bright red, and I got hot flashes. And I thought, what in the world? And I turned the corner, and that same voice said, "It's in the bag." And I saw his backpack. I could see a necklace box, which I had found a receipt for a diamond pendant about 10 days prior.
Okay, let's move on to, because we are going to use up all our time. Let's get more into the Antigua.
That's how I ended up coming to Guatemala, was because I went through a traumatic divorce, and he moved to Chicago. I had to sell the house. I didn't sleep for a month. I ended up in the hospital in psychosis. I had a plan to come to Guatemala to volunteer for a year. My parents ended up coming to get me because I went into a terrible psychosis. I almost died. I didn't know my name when I went to the hospital because I had gone without sleep for 30 days or over 30 days. So I had my ticket to Guatemala, but instead of coming to Guatemala, I went to Walla Walla, where my parents were, and recovered for several months. And of course, I hated being there because I wanted to be in Guatemala. Eventually, I started to recover. I started volunteering. I started taking classes. I recovered. My psychiatrist friend said, as soon as you feel better, get yourself back to Guatemala because that's where your heart is. So when she said that, I said, you know what? I feel better. I opened my laptop for the first time in months, and I purchased a ticket to Guatemala for December 15th, 2019. This was 6 months after my divorce was final.
Did you start then? Was that when you started A Heart for Guatemala? I know you used to have.
I started A Heart for Guatemala in 2020 when I was stuck during COVID.
Okay.
So on the way down to Guatemala, I stopped in Houston for 5 days to catch up with my friends. And that's when I met Stan. And I spent 5 days in Houston, came to Guatemala on the 15th, lived with Valerie Russell for a month. On the 7th day, I woke up and said, oh my gosh, I have enough money from the divorce and the sale of my house to buy a house here in Guatemala. And then nobody can make me go back to Walla Walla. So I called up my friend Jorge at Jorge's List, my favorite realtor, the only one I trust. There's some good realtors in this town, but I really like Jorge. I had done 2 real estate tours with him previously because of Valerie. And I knew the area. I knew the prices. I knew what was available. I knew I wanted to live in Hocotenango because that's where the school was that I wanted to support and volunteer at. And I knew the prices in Hocotenango were some of the lower ones. So
okay, I just put a thing out there for everybody if they have some questions, because you're getting into the idea of cost of housing and such. So there might be some people that maybe you can tell us a little bit about, you had a realtor, but when you were looking, how were you surprised pleasantly or not so regarding the cost of buying a house or renting a place?
Okay.
How would you?
So when I brought that group of 10 in 18, one of my ideas for a tourist activity was to play international house hunters. So that's when I contacted Valerie to arrange that. She hired Jorge to do the tour. They put together an informational package and took us to about 3 different condominiums around Antigua. And we were surprised because we were from Houston and we had nice houses in Houston. Houses here were double the price, double or more the price. So we were like really kind of shocked. They didn't take us to Hocotenango. I don't remember where we went exactly, but they were nice houses, but they were way expensive. They were $350.
Can you see Gary's question on the screen?
Yes. I would also like to know how you initially found your realtor. Also, did you hire a lawyer to help you in buying the home? So I found Jorge through Valerie. She hired him to do the International House Hunters tour. And then later I did another tour with him because my husband at the time said, you should go back and look at houses. So I trusted him. And when I called and told him, I want to buy a house in Hocotenango, 2 bedrooms, small, because it's just going to be me. And my budget's $140,000. And so he said, well, let me see if there's anything on the market. He He looked around and he called me back. He says, "There's just one house in your price range. It's in Bay Vista, and it's exactly 140,000, but it's furnished." So I said, "Let's go look at it." So he drove me over there. We walked through the house, and I'm like, "All right, who do I write the check to?"
Did you have to hire a lawyer? Carrie was curious.
Yes, there was a lawyer. There were, I think there was 2 lawyers involved. I think the homeowner had one and I had one, and Jorge arranged.
Normal. Yeah, I think
Jorge arranged the lawyer, and it was everything went very smooth from the day I made the offer to the day I moved in was 30 days.
That's a heck of a price in that area.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, I just sold.
Don't know. For those of you out there that don't know, Hocotenango is about a 10 to 15 minute walk to Antigua, the Central Park area of Antigua. It's one of the outlying suburbs, so to speak. And there's a lot of them in the area that are just surrounding Antigua. So you can live within better budgets without living directly in Antigua itself.
I have really enjoyed living in Hocotenango. It's more real Guatemalan. You know, the tourists aren't there. Although Finca Azotea and Finca Philadelphia are there, and Echo Farms. But we have the commercial center. We have 3 grocery stores. You know, I know the neighbors. We walk around. Everyone, you know, waves and knows our name. So I've totally enjoyed it. But the price of the house, you know, I thought was good. If that same neighborhood was in California, there would be multi-million-dollar, $5 to $10 million homes easily. My little house would be over $1 million in California. It was 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, with a jacuzzi tub and a terrace. And of course, the neighborhood is gated with cameras on every corner, 4 armed guards, which in hindsight, you know, was very good for me just moving there, not knowing anything. But when I do it again, I don't want to live in such a gated neighborhood because it's kind of a pain when people come to visit. You know, they have to know the code and call you and so forth. And I'm pura chapina now. I don't need that level of security. The last mayor of Antigua installed security cameras on every corner in Antigua. There's panic buttons. There's even a panic button right on the corner by where I live in Hocotenango. So
in that vein, would you say that life in Antigua is a pretty safe place for people to settle down as an expat?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I feel safer in Antigua walking around doing business than I do anywhere in the States, really. You know, of course, there's poverty here. The poverty here does not compare to the poverty in the rest of Antigua or in the rest of Guatemala. Antigua is, you know, like the Disneyland of Guatemala.
Right.
But you go behind the walls, especially in Hocotenango, Pastores, the further out you get from the center, the more poverty that there is. And it's hard to see. It was my 5th trip before I saw the poverty up close and personal. But, you know, the center of Antigua, houses are about $1 million. It's the most expensive properties in all of Central America because remember that Antigua was the original capital of Central America. Then it became the capital of Guatemala. Then it was destroyed by earthquake in 1776.
Carrie's our main question person. She's talking about,
do you drive in Guatemala? If not, is it easy to get a tuk from Hocotenango? I do not drive, and that was one of the motivating factors for me to move here is that I really don't like to drive. Actually, recently I bought a car in the States, and I do enjoy having that car and driving. But at the time, I didn't want a car, and I would not probably ever have a car here because you can get an Uber, you can get tuks, you can get the bus, you can hire a driver for much cheaper, and you don't have the liability because as a foreigner in a car, if you get in an accident, most likely you're going to go to jail here. And you got to have a lawyer and you better have insurance.
That's why we just bought insurance. We just bought insurance with our new car. And one of the things our insurance covers that you don't worry about in the States is bail bonds if you go to jail and getting a lawyer to the accident to keep you out of jail. That's included in your insurance.
Correct. That's what I've heard is that if you've got good insurance, the lawyer will be sent right to the accident scene.
And don't leave. They said, do not leave till your lawyer gets there. So that's
correct. So just this week, there's been massive protests throughout Guatemala because the new president, or the current president, enacted a law to require motorists, including motos, to have insurance, which is, you know, has never been the case here before, which is a good idea. But, you know, people don't have that in their budget. You know, the average minimum salary wage here is under $400 a month, and that's for rent, for food, for everything. So you can imagine that people weren't happy. So they did road blockades, and they decided, the president or Congress or whoever decided to push that law back a whole year. So they've got a year to figure out how they're going to add that to the budget.
Problem with being live, you can hear Missy in the background. Brian, you can ask the next question. I'm going to get the dog.
So back to the tuk-tuks and the buses. I love taking the bus, but I would not take the bus to the Capitol. Since I've been here, there have been 2 murders to bus drivers because of extortion here in Antigua. But I've always felt very safe taking the bus to and from the market to Hocotenango. And my big joke is when I get on the bus, I sit in the front seat because I said, if there's going to be a shooting, I want to be front row and center because I want to go down. If I'm going to die in Guatemala, I want to have a good story. So it's 4 quetzales, which is 50 cents to take the bus, in and around Antigua. And then there's yellow tuk-tuks in Hocotenango that also charge 4 quetzales, but they only stay within Hocotenango. The silver and blue tuk-tuks, the prices vary, and it's frankly cheaper to take a new.
I wondered about that.
It's cheaper,
I've
more
seen the
comfortable.
different colors, and I didn't realize that there were different places and prices.
Yeah.
So that's a new piece of information for me.
Just on this trip, I started taking the Uber motos, much to my parents' chagrin. I'm sure my mom might be on this call, but it's only 10 quetzales to jump on the back of a moto. And the cobblestones and stuff there, they drive slowly, and I'm able to have conversations with them. So I feel perfectly safe and have a great time and save a couple bucks doing that.
Go ahead,
I was just going to say for Debbie to that question about insurance, maybe you can type in on the chat because I can't type here.
I did.
Or so you answer the question about what insurance we have?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, perfect. Continue on, Kim.
Now, back to the buses. Once again, you're in Antigua, and a lot of people, Guatemala has many faces when you get right to it. And there are people in places that you don't want to take some of the buses.
Correct. Most definitely.
I've been on a chicken bus one time here in Shayla, and I don't ever want to do it again.
Yeah, I would never take the chicken bus or the camioneta properly.
Right. Now we do take the big Pullman style buses back and forth to the city, and that's never been a problem.
Camionetas, or known amongst the expats as the chicken buses, I would not take from Guatemala City to Antigua, but around.
For those of you that don't know that are online, chicken buses are old school buses decked out in multiple colors, and they're usually not very well maintained. And you'll see them driving quite rapidly down the road, especially on the highways. And so I've seen them look like they're ready to fall over.
I've seen them turned over. Yes,
we have seen axles on the highway and turned over buses. Yeah, so it's not. It's not the
recently a major accident here in Guatemala where about 30 some people passed away, unfortunately. So
yeah, that was in the city. I'm going off that bridge. That was the whole start of this insurance thing. It was because of that and the number of victims that the president wanted to make sure everybody had insurance, because this was actually back in 1996 was first talked about, but never came to fruition. Anyway, side note. And as Kim mentioned earlier, here in Guatemala, people have a tendency when they don't want to do certain things, they don't want the laws to go certain ways. When they protest by putting blockades in the highways and the roads, and people can't get around. And even in the city, and Carrie can attest to this, she posted some pictures on her Facebook page. Some of the crowds down in Zone 1 and the other zones in the city got out of hand. There were riots. So people do know how to stand up for themselves here. Guatemalans might not make a lot of money, but they know how to stand up for themselves.
I'd like to mention some of the things, some of the reasons why I love Antigua.
Yes, let's go there. Let's go there. Let's do the good things.
The seas. We'll start with the culture.
Yes.
Guatemala is the last country in Central America where the Mayan indigenous people still wear the beautiful, colorful trajes. So it's just gorgeous. The indigenous are, wonderful people. They work hard. It's day-to-day living, but they're very faithful, religious people. They believe in God. Everything is primero Dios, God first. Si Dios quiere, if God wants. They're beautiful people, and I just love being around them. We'll talk about the climate. It's the land of eternal spring. It's 70 degrees year round. We have a rainy season and a dry season. I particularly like the rainy season. It starts in May and ends end of October, first part of November. There's a shower, every other afternoon. A few times a year, there'll be major downpours and the market, the streets will flood, and it'll be a mess for a little while, but it dries up. And I love taking an afternoon siesta. It'll be beautiful blue skies in the morning. After lunch, it'll cloud up, it'll rain. I take my nap, I wake up, I light the incense, I make the coffee, and read my books or do some writing. And so I love the climate. It gets in the 50s at night and up to the low 80s during the day, but there's always shade on one side of the street in Antigua. So, when you're walking around, remember your sunscreen and your hat and your sunglasses, but the weather's wonderful. It's perfect for me. And during the rainy season, everything's lush and green. During the dry season, it gets dusty. And remember, we have the active volcano Fuego that, it's going off almost every day. So you got ash in the air. Let's see, we got coffee. Some of the best coffee comes from Antigua, from the hills around here, and we're in the Ponchoy Valley. There's coffee throughout the entire country, but we're partial to Antigua coffee. I am an affiliate for Chica Bean, which is in Santa Lucia, Milpas Altas, and so if you want to buy the freshest coffee in the world, it comes from the farm in Jalapa and is roasted, processed, bagged, and shipped by UPS direct from the roastery in Santa Lucia, Milpas Altas to the United States. So could be right now from farm to your front door in about a week's time. So if you want to purchase them, it's chickabean.com. Put in my name, Kim Rogers, as the affiliate. I do not get paid. I am a volunteer, but a little bit of money from each bag sold goes to my projects, which I currently am working with 5 projects. Okay, so we've talked about climate.
Tell us about the project. Yeah.
Well, she's on 3 of her 5 C's, so.
Okay, let's see. There's the children here, which that's near and dear to my heart. When I came here, I saw lots of needs. I was very naive. I thought, there's so much need. Nobody knows about Guatemala. It's all up to me to get things done. Well, I had no idea. Later, I found out there's 15,000 nonprofits and thousands of missionaries here. People like to come to Guatemala because it's close to the States. It's easy to get here, and the climate's good, and the cost of living. So that's another C, cost of living. But I felt in my heart that the best way to support Guatemalans and as our neighbors is to support education, because people here need an education so that they can get a job. And even with education, it's hard to get a job. But I just feel that that's the best thing, rather than give opportunities. So,
exactly.
Over the years, I've had 10 people sponsoring students at Escuela Integrada, which is a small private school in Jocotenango. And it's been around for about 25 years. If you're interested in sponsoring a student or learning more about that, wearegraces.org to find out. About $90 a month to sponsor a student, and it's a fantastic opportunity. I'm so grateful.
Do me a favor, Kim. Send me all these links that you're talking about when we're all done, and I'll put them in the description for the video that goes on after the live.
I'd be happy to.
Okay.
So that's the main project, that I worked with over the years is Escuela Integrada, getting sponsors. I've donated, books, backpacks, shoes. I've also worked with Amalia Harkin with Start With a Smile project, and that is her little school in Santa Rosa, Taxisco, which is down towards the coast about an hour from here. And it's hot there, and the poverty is striking. And after a few trips down there, I donated, thanks to a Rotarian in my hometown of Milton Freewater, Oregon. He donated $5,000, and we worked with Rotary and some missionaries, and we got 6 flushing toilets. They didn't have any running water really at that school. So for the first time, they have flushing, clean bathrooms, and sinks to wash their hands. Before, they just had outhouses, and there's 300 students in the school. So that was quite an accomplishment. It was something that, it was a seed that I saw my first trip there. And Amalia said, her dream was to have flushing toilets there. I said, well, let me see what I can do. And it took a couple years.
And that is an amazing step forward for a lot of I mean, people don't realize, it seems like, and I think Carrie has said this in her videos before, people either think this is all, the whole country's like that. They don't realize that there's rich and extreme poor here. There is some middle class, but it's you got to find it. We live in a very, I'll call upper middle class neighborhood, but to see that poverty after you've been in Antigua, there's a big contrast. There's a big contrast there.
Yeah. For me, going there to Taxisco, I mean, the first time I took Stan there, he bawled. He had never seen anything. I mean, I had never seen anything like that up close and personal. I mean, it was hard on Stan. And I decided after a time, we did the bathroom project. They were so pleased with that. I did a local fundraiser with Joanna Hare of Water for Life Global, and we did I think it was 150 water filters, because they had no source of clean water in that area either. So after those two projects, I went back to do studies to see if they were using the filters properly and to check on the bathrooms and so forth. I'm like, when I invite Rotary groups, missionary groups, girls groups, whatever down, I need to be able to show them the project so that they can be inspired to donate and participate. So it's too hard especially if it's your first trip to Antigua, time restraints, the cost of transportation, how you feel when you get there, and the heat, and then seeing this poverty. I mean, there's dead dogs laying around. The children are without shoes. It's so hot. People, they don't have opportunities to work. I mean, the men go to work somewhere, but the women and the children are just, sitting around with fans, and they don't have good nutrition there. They have fruit, but, they eat tortillas, beans, maybe some rice, a little bit of chicken once in a while, but, they drink a lot of Coke because it's cheaper than water, and they don't have access.
That you go into any tienda in Guatemala, and to get a Coke or heck, a beer is cheaper than water, which is partially why alcoholism is so high here. It's so cheap to pick up a beer. Yeah.
So I decided at that point that, yes, I still wanted to support Amalia because she has worked so hard, and that school has seen so many improvements. But as far as taking people there, you don't do that on your first trip to Guatemala. So I'm concentrating with my projects in and around Antigua in the Panchoy Valley for the most part now. But, thankfully, at first I was very taken back, like, oh my gosh, I thought I had all these ideas of how to raise money and how to raise funds and bring people to Guatemala. Well, every nonprofit and missionary is doing the exact same thing. So for a while, I really got, disillusioned. And then I read a book called Doing Good Says Who, written by a couple of ladies who worked in nonprofit at Liveinguatemala for 30 years. And, that book cut my heart open. It's like, am I really doing any good here? Is this just for my ego? And so, there was a time where I was just like, I don't think I'm doing any good. I think I'm wasting my, I don't think there's any hope, because people have said they came to Guatemala 40 years ago and they came back today and nothing has changed. There's still so much poverty here. You have millions and millions of dollars. Rotary International donates more money to Guatemala than any other country in the world.
Oh, I didn't know
There's
that.
USAID. There's so many missionaries that were doing so much good stuff. But, it's just so much poverty. It's so much corruption. There's a 1% of ultra rich, and they want the people uneducated so that they can, pick the coffee beans for literally beans.
This one is kind of interesting because I don't know where, Joseph, I don't know if you live here or not, but that's not even close. I mean, that is not the average monthly wage in Shela for sure. And even though that's the legal monthly wage, there's very few places that pay the legal monthly wage. And that's part of the problem here. They get away with 1,800 Q a month, 2,000 Q a month, because everybody needs a job and they're afraid to fight it. And so,
correct.
If you're in an area that's paying that as a monthly wage, I need to have my students all move there, because none of them is making that kind of money.
Here in Hocotenango, the families that participate with Escuela Integrada, their average monthly wage is less than $300 for the entire family. So yes, they're working for lower than minimum wage, and it's easy, unfortunately, to get away with paying less than minimum wage. By law, you have to pay, almost $400 a month minimum wage, plus 2 months annual bonus. Plus paid feriados or holidays, paid vacation, pay into the healthcare system.
Social Security and the IGS healthcare system. Yep.
Yes.
All that's
Yes.
supposed to happen, but very few places, at least locally here, is it actually happening.
Right.
And
Well,
I mean,
and I think one issue with that is the people who are making that little bit of money, they don't have enough money to fight it. So I just remember with the one student we had that she was working at some place and she was making close to 3,000 Q a month, not quite, but when she left that job and then went to the Department of Labor to fight that, and they gave her a piece of paper that said, this is based on what you told us, this is what we believe that you are owed from them. And when she took it to the employer, he said, basically, I'll give you about a third of that, take it or leave it. And she took it because she didn't have the means to fight that, so she's, it just kind of perpetuates the thing. Even if the government was trying to help them,
right.
they're just so poor that they can't hang on and fight it. They just, and some of it I do believe is a little bit of an attitude or a culture here of, I'm going to do what's the easiest thing, whether it's right or wrong, and just accepting, 5,000 quetzales instead of waiting for the 15,000. That's the easiest thing, and move on. So.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the last C, which is the cost of living. And that's one of the motivating factors for me living here was that, I had been married all my adult life, and I had husbands that made money. I worked. I was a flight attendant for 15 years. I have a college degree in business administration, travel management, a minor in Spanish. But my main career was working with the airlines, which I loved. And, when I was thinking about, should I stay in Houston, go back to Walla Walla, where should I go back to South Carolina? I've lived in a lot of places, but how much money do I have to earn to support myself? And, my love was in Guatemala. So I figured that come here, I pay cash for a house, which I'm a huge Dave Ramsey fan. So my goal was always to own a house that was paid for by the time I was 50. So I was thrilled at age 48 that I could pay cash for my own house. And I made the budget that I could live how I wanted, because I'm very frugal. I could live a good lifestyle on $1,500 a month because I had a paid for house. Of course I had to pay the HOA, which was $50 a month. I had to pay my Wi-Fi $50 a month, homeowner's insurance, which was $300 a year. My cell phone bill, groceries, transportation. What I love, I'm frugal, but I love a little bit, as Stan would say, bougie lifestyle. I love getting a massage once a month. I love getting a pedicure once a month. I love fresh flowers, which when I came, I didn't realize that you could go to the market and buy them yourself for $1.50 to $2 a bundle.
Next to nothing, yes.
I love to fill my house with fresh flowers.
They're beautiful. Yeah.
Flowers are my love language. So, all these things, I had a friend, Emmy, that would come to my house and give me a massage for 150 Q, which is $20. She would do my pedicure for, I think it was 100. Prices have gone up. Everything's gone up over the years. COVID.
That kind of stuff is so nice to be able to pamper yourself with and stay within a reasonable budget.
Yes.
The same thing here. I can get a great massage for 150 Q. I mean, it's an amazing experience too.
Yeah,
And
I had an acupuncturist, actually a gringo from New York. He would come to my house, give me acupuncture once a month. I considered it my self-care because I have experienced periods of depression and anxiety 5 times in my life, all triggered by periods that I was worried about money and finances and debt. So the way, living within a budget is, fun for me. I enjoy it, and I have it written out, and I could live, very well. The problem with me is I came here to start a nonprofit, and when I was giving my speeches, I'm very passionate about, these children in extreme poverty and how we can help them. But I was not passionate about taking care of myself. I could not stand up in front of a crowd and ask for money for children in extreme poverty and pay myself $20,000 to $40,000 first. So I decided I just wanted to be a volunteer, in which I am today, still a
We
volunteer.
have a nonprofit and we don't make any money either. So
Nonprofit is a business, but it's a tough business to support yourself in. So that's why in November of 2022, together with Stan, we started Casa Corazon GT, which is a bed and breakfast in Hocotenango. So that was to be my business so that I could earn money from, a for-profit business. So it is still in business today. It's a beautiful house. Dan's done a great job.
yes,
He's a
I
great
just stayed there. Hey, we only have like 15 minutes left. So what I'd like to talk about, and if anybody has any questions, especially if you haven't been here, what places, what are must see or must go to places, in your opinion, in Antigua and the surrounding areas?
There's so much to do. I've lived here now for over 4 years, and countless trips. I bought my house on my 7th trip, and there's still things I have not done. So, the main things that I think, if you're coming here for an exploratory trip, the main things that I think you should do is a historical walking tour. I can send you the list of my favorite restaurants to put down below.
Yep.
Top 3. Aqua, where I'm going to take my group tonight, has the best terrace and view, and the food's very good, food and drinks. Sobre Mesa, which is on 4th Calle. They also have a beautiful terrace and great food. And Tortines, which has a terrace view overlooking the ruins. Those are my top 3.
We've been there, yep.
But there's countless wonderful restaurants, and there's new ones opening up all the time. Okay, so I would say that you need to stop into Casa Santo Domingo, the 5-star hotel, walk through the grounds. There's 7 museums there. I think for 50 Q, you can go through the museums. Super interesting. Used to be a convent. It's just gorgeous. The most expensive weddings in Guatemala happen there. Also from there, you can get a free bus or, take an Uber up to El Tenedor for lunch with a view of the valley. And that's owned by Casa Santo Domingo. You should definitely have coffee tours. You take an Uber out to Chicabeen to have a coffee experience that you can't get anywhere else.
We did that too, and that was great. We learned a lot. Yeah.
Chicabeen is run by all women, so that's something that's super important to support. And besides that, to actually get onto the coffee farms, I recommend La Azotea, which is on the border of Antigua and Hocotenango. For about $10 or $15, you can have a walking coffee tour along with a cultural tour. They also have coffee shops and restaurants. El Carbon is a great restaurant to eat at. And on the other side of Hocotenango is one of the oldest coffee fincas is Finca Philadelphia. They have a beautiful restaurant and view and coffee tour as well. So those are my top things. People always love Simone ATV tours, which will take you outside of Antigua up Del Hato.
We did that too, yes.
That's very fun. I've never heard anybody say they didn't like that. And Cuscun Cooking School. That's located in Hocotenango. Joaquin is the owner. He's currently living in Colombia, but definitely every person I've ever sent to that cooking class has really enjoyed it. It's not cheap. It's about $65, but you get, you're there for several hours. Alcohol and food is included, and you will just have the best time and walk away with your recipe book and having learned how to make either pepion or jocon. Pepion is the national dish of Guatemala, and jocon is my favorite.
Hey, Kim. Just a couple of these things, these tours, are there, like the cooking thing specifically, is there English speaking, or do you have to know Spanish to be able to?
Everything in Antigua, every hotel, restaurant, there's English speakers, so don't worry about that. And when you come to Antigua, please pay in quetzales. Bring your ATM card and take out quetzales from the ATM. You can bring dollars to exchange, but you have to go to the bank and stand in line and take your passport. It's just easier to get it from the ATM. The locals have a terrible time converting dollars to quetzales, so please pay in quetzales. And most restaurants and stores will take credit cards and debit cards. So I recommend using your credit card for meals out, and make sure that your credit card has no international fees.
Yeah.
Yep. And the other thing is, and you mentioned, get the money at an ATM. Actually, you get some of your best rates of return.
And the current rate is roughly 7.7 quetzales to dollar. It fluctuates between 7.5 and 8, and it's been that way for as long as I've been coming. So
it's been for a long time now. I've been averaging, I use 7.6 because it goes up 7.7, 7.8, 7.5. So I just use 7.6 for everything and makes life easy. And I tell people, if you have a 100Q bill, you're spending $13. It's a $13 bill.
And the easiest way to convert is this app. Probably can't see it.
Not really.
What's it called? It's a currency app, and you just type in dollars and it instantly converts to quetzales or any other country. I used to make up little paper charts for people, but this is just too easy. And
it's very easy.
I'll try to remember to also include my packing list. I have an easy packing list for people who want to come do their exploratory trips. It's, I can pack in 10 minutes to come to Guatemala. You just remember it's eternal spring. You need layers. It's going to be cool in the morning, cool at night. During the day, shorts. But this is a conservative country, even though there's tourists from all over the world, and some of them are inappropriately wearing swimming suits and sexy outfits around town. But remember, people here are religious. They're faithful. They appreciate when we cover our shoulders. When you go into the churches, there's several dozen churches and ruins here. So when you're touring those, you should be conservative and have respect.
And if you're like me, bring bug spray when you get into the warmer climates. Shayla, I'm fine. I get to Antigua or the lake, or when we go next week to the Caribbean coast, I've got 2 cans of off already packed.
Yes, dengue fever is a real thing here, so you want to protect yourself by using, bug spray. This trip, I have not had. Well, I did get one bite, but I have not actually used anything since I've been here, and for whatever reason, the Casa Corazon in Hocotenango does not have a problem with mosquitoes. So that's, great.
Can you,
but you definitely want
to we only have a few minutes left, but there's this question you mentioned earlier about these bus drivers. And before you answer it, I'm going to answer the last part of it about not getting targeted. The biggest thing is don't flaunt what you have. And don't be out alone in inappropriate places, and don't get overly drunk if you are drinking. I mean, the things that make you not be able to be aware of your surroundings, it's common sense. But as far as, I don't know anything about the 2 bus drivers. Kim, you mentioned that.
Well, extortion is a real thing here in Guatemala. That's because, there's such limited opportunities and limited education. So extortionists, go to businesses, bus drivers, all kinds of people, and basically threaten death or harm or death or kidnapping. And, I'm going to come back tomorrow and you're going to pay me X amount of dollars or quetzales, should I say, or this is going to happen. So that happens to the bus drivers. They get extorted, and if they don't pay or they give them a hard time, the extortionists will come and shoot them. So yes, in the last 5 years, 2 people have been murdered. 2 bus drivers have been murdered here in the Antigua area. Like I said, I would never take it. Happens a lot in the city. I think less than it used to, but it does happen. And extortion is a scary thing. So
we hear about it occasionally here also in Shayla. And I'm sure there's similar things. Extortion in general, and most of it is because Margie's asking the same thing again. Is it an issue here in Shayla? And it can be around the whole nation because of the poverty that we talked about. And so it seems like you hear about it in streaks. Like there was a couple of times right in a row a couple of years ago that we heard about a bus driver getting robbed and somebody running away and all this, but now I haven't heard of anything recently. So it just,
let me just add,
just like
little bit about, like I said, here in Antigua, there's cameras on every corner. There's an entire police force, the tourist police. Spent some time there today, actually, on an unrelated issue. But I feel very protected in this town. I've been here for 5 years. People know me by name. Everywhere I go, I always joke. I'm like, be careful.
People do know her. I have been with her in Antigua. People, we went to dinner last week or a couple days ago. And there must have been 5 or 6 people before dinner was even served that came up. Oh, Kim, how you doing? Oh, all these people, they know her. So
I had only lived here for 4 or 5 months because I bought my house. I lived for 4 weeks, went home to sell my car and get my clothes to come back. And COVID shut the country down. So I was stuck in the States for 8 months from February to November. But then when I came back, I decided to do the local fundraiser, and it was my job as I was working with Joanna. She knew what she was doing. I didn't. So she said, it's your job to go around and get prizes for the raffles. I went to 40 businesses and I got 40 prizes. Nobody said no. So I know the business owners and I appreciate them. They do a great job and they're very generous in supporting nonprofits. That's one thing that Stan and I love about this community is that, almost all of our friends are involved in either their own project, their own mission, or they find one that they love and support, and they volunteer and they donate money, and it's just so heartwarming, And that's
we're gonna have to wrap this up because we're almost at an hour, and I know you have somewhere to be, and I've got people coming over here as well. But for those of you that didn't get a chance to ask a question or have more questions for Kim, she's going to send me all of her links with all of her information, the companies that she's working with, as well as her Facebook information. I'll post all of that in the video once it goes online after the live is over, so that you can go back and you can communicate directly with her. You can ask me questions and I can find answers. We're always willing to, if we don't know them, we're willing to find the answers, because this video could go on for hours. There's so much to talk about. But we just want to thank everybody. My husband in Michigan, that's why he's sitting there just kind of quietly and showing us his finger every once in a while so he can see the remarks.
Now I'm showing you my finger. The other times are just...
Yeah. One final comment is I would love to invite everybody to come visit Antigua, Guatemala. Come spend your vacation here. Come relax. Come enjoy all that it has to offer. If you want to move here, fine. It is a good cost of living. Everyone is welcome. But if you come, please come prepared to be involved in the community. We need your help and we need your support. And we love having expats get involved in the community and make friends with Guatemalans. Come be prepared to learn some Spanish. Spanish is the language here. So
I'm going to tag on to that, Kim. I'm going to tag on to that. Please don't come here trying to turn it into the United States. Come here and enjoy the culture. You're going to find things that you will complain about. I still do. But you know what? I still am here. We still love it. And you just get through it and you get over it. So don't come with the expectation that you're going to make this where you used to be. Other than, if you want to do that, stay where you are.
It's a slower pace of life, and that's what I love. It's like living in the United States back in the 50s. You go to a lot of the doctors and dentist's office. They don't have a computer at the front desk. They have an agenda like this. They'll note your next appointment in their calendar.
Yes. There's a lot of old-fashioned ways that they're getting things done. So, well, thank you, Kim, for giving us your time, and I appreciate everything that you're doing for Guatemala, for Antigua, and for sharing dinner with me the other night and sharing this time with us today. And Missy has to say goodbye too one more time. So everybody have a good day, and thank you for joining us at Brian?
Life in Guatemala.
Life in Guatemala.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.